AITA for messing with my neighbor who won't stop spreading lies. I live in a quiet apartment complex on the very edge of town, tucked away behind a small strip of shops and a winding stretch of trees. It's the kind of place where people move when they're looking for a slower, simpler life. Most of the tenants keep to themselves. There are friendly nods in the hallway, polite smiles by the mailboxes, and the occasional small talk while waiting for the laundry machines. For the most part, it's been a peaceful place to live, except for my neighbor, Judith. Judith lives 2 doors down from me, and from the day I moved in, she's been difficult. She's in her late 50s, lives alone, and somehow manages to be at the center of every single piece of drama in the building. She thrives on attention and chaos like it's the very air she breathes. Judith has unofficially declared herself the community representative. No one voted for her. No one asked her to take that role. She just woke up one day, decided that she was in charge, and started behaving as if everyone else had to answer to her. She knocks on people's doors at random hours under the pretense of checking in, but what she's really doing is prying for information. She wants to know where people go, who they're with, what they're doing, and when they're doing it. And when she doesn't get the answers she wants, she stirs up trouble. Last month was the worst incident yet. Judith accused another tenant, Grace, of stealing packages from the lobby. Grace is one of the kindest people you could ever meet. She's in her early 60s, retired, and always bakes cookies for the neighbors around the holidays. She's lived in this complex for over a decade and has never so much as raised her voice at anyone. When Judith marched into the lobby one evening, shouting that Grace had stolen a delivery, everyone was stunned. Grace tried to defend herself, but Judith wouldn't let her get a word in. "I saw you take it," Judith screamed, pointing a shaky finger. "You've been sneaking around for weeks. Don't you dare lie to me." Grace was nearly in tears. "Judith, I didn't take anything. Why would you even say that?" But Judith didn't stop there. The next morning, she went to Nolan, the building manager, and told him that Grace had threatened her. Grace was completely blindsided when Nolan called her into the office to discuss the alleged threat. Then, as if that weren't enough, Judith posted a dramatic rant on our building's Facebook group. In it, she claimed she was being targeted by a violent ring of criminals who lived among us and were plotting against her. She never mentioned Grace by name, but it was obvious who she was talking about. The comments exploded, with some people defending Grace and others unsure of what to believe. Grace stopped leaving her apartment except for essentials after that. The wildest part about Judith is her obsession with her so-called spiritual gifts. She insists she's some kind of spiritual protector. She tells people she can leave her physical form and ascend to higher realms whenever her enemies are attacking her. She talks about receiving messages from the universe and fighting dark forces that no one else can see. At first, some people humored her because it seemed harmless, just the eccentric ramblings of a lonely woman. But then she started using her gifts to justify everything she did. If she spread a rumor, it wasn't gossip. It was her intuition revealing hidden truths. If someone called her out, she'd say they were possessed by negative energy. If she felt cornered, she'd claim to have transcended into another realm and therefore couldn't be held accountable for what happened while she was gone. It would almost be funny if it weren't so disruptive and hurtful. The worst part, though, is how she accuses people of the very things she's doing. Judith has a habit of following tenants around the property. I've seen her lurking behind trees near the parking lot or crouched by the mailboxes, pretending to check her phone while clearly eavesdropping on conversations. But if someone turns to confront her, she immediately starts yelling that they are the ones stalking her. It's maddening. I've always tried to stay out of her nonsense, but recently, that's become impossible. Last week, she cornered me outside the laundry room. I had just finished folding my clothes when she appeared in the doorway, blocking my path. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. "I know you've been watching me," she hissed. "Don't think I haven't noticed." I blinked in confusion. "Judith, I haven't been watching you. I've been doing my laundry." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They all think I'm crazy, but I see everything. Everything." My heart pounded. I forced a calm smile. "I'm not interested in drama, Judith. Have a good night." I slipped past her and hurried back to my apartment, locking the door behind me. Later that night, I scrolled through Facebook and froze. Judith had posted a long, dramatic message about a certain neighbor who lurks in the shadows, spying on her every move. She didn't mention my name, but the timing made it clear she was talking about me. That was the moment I decided I couldn't just sit back anymore. If she was going to play games, I was going to play one right back. Something petty, harmless, but just enough to get under her skin. In my culture, there's a symbol known as the evil eye. It's meant to ward off negative energy and protect against bad intentions. I had a little set of paints lying around. So one quiet evening, I sat down and carefully painted a handful of small stones with bright blue evil eyes. The next morning, I placed them around the building. A few went on windowsills, some near the lobby plants, and one right outside Judith's door. The effect was almost immediate. When Judith saw the first one, she gasped so loudly I could hear it through my closed door. Later, I peeked out my peephole and saw her standing in the hallway, clutching the stone like it was radioactive. She was muttering about dark forces and spiritual warfare. By the next day, she was stomping through the hallways, demanding to know who was attacking her with cursed symbols. "It's a direct assault on my soul," she cried to anyone who would listen. I didn't admit to anything, of course. There's nothing illegal about leaving a few painted rocks around the building. Nolan even commented on how cute they were when he saw one in the lobby. Watching Judith spiral brought me a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, I wasn't the one feeling trapped or targeted. She was. But deep down, I know Judith doesn't let things go. She thrives on conflict, and something tells me this little prank is only the beginning of a much bigger storm. I knew Judith would escalate things, but I wasn't prepared for how far she would take it. 2 nights ago, I was in my apartment watching TV when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Grace. The neighbor Judith had falsely accused of stealing packages. "You need to check the building Facebook group," she wrote. When I opened it, my jaw dropped. Judith had posted a long rant claiming that someone was using dark magic to poison the community. She even uploaded blurry photos of the evil eye stones I'd left, calling them dangerous spiritual devices. The comments section exploded. Some tenants laughed it off, others were confused, but a few actually seemed worried. Judith thrives on that, on planting seeds of doubt. The next morning, things got even worse. As I walked to my car, I saw Judith standing in the parking lot with her phone, loudly telling someone that she was being spiritually attacked. She was pointing at random tenants, including me, as if she were naming suspects in a crime. That afternoon, the building manager, Nolan, called an emergency meeting. Judith showed up with a folder full of evidence. It was mostly printed screenshots of her own Facebook posts and photos of the painted rocks. She demanded Nolan take action against whoever was plotting against her. When Nolan calmly explained that decorated stones weren't a violation of any rules, Judith's face turned bright red. "You're part of this too," she shouted, slamming her folder on the table. "You want to destroy me because you're jealous of my spiritual gifts." Everyone went silent. It was one of the most uncomfortable moments of my life. Then Grace stood up. Her voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. "Judith, you've been harassing people here for months. You've accused almost every single one of us of something. Enough is enough." A few others chimed in, agreeing with Grace. Even Nolan backed her up, stating that there had been multiple complaints about Judith's behavior. Judith burst into tears, claiming we were all working together to silence her. She stormed out of the room, yelling that we would regret underestimating her. For a brief moment, it seemed like things might settle down. But later that night, every tenant received a mass text message from Judith. "You've made a powerful enemy," it read. "I will reveal the truth about all of you. The higher realms are watching." Now, the entire building is on edge. Some tenants want to ignore her. Others want to report her to the property owners. As for me, I just keep walking past those little blue stones and reminding myself why I placed them there in the first place. Judith thrives on chaos. I won't give her the satisfaction of seeing me afraid. But deep down, I know this fight isn't over, and the next round could be even worse.
Your situation is unusual but clear in its core dynamic. Judith is the source of the trouble, not you. Her behavior is a mix of paranoia, projection, and control-seeking. She places herself in a position of authority without any legitimacy and then lashes out at neighbors whenever her imagined power is threatened. This is not normal eccentricity. This is disruptive, destabilizing, and harmful to the community. Now, to your actual actions. You responded to harassment not with retaliation in the form of insults, threats, or sabotage, but with symbolic art. Painted rocks are harmless. They carry meaning, yes, but the meaning is entirely in the eye of the beholder. To some, they are protection charms. To others, they are folk art. To Judith, they are mystical weapons. That last part is on her, not on you. She interpreted an ordinary act as aggression because she thrives on the idea that she's being persecuted. So, are you the AITA? No, you are not. In fact, you took a route that was playful, nonviolent, and even a little clever. You gave yourself a sense of agency in a situation where you had been made to feel powerless. That is not cruelty, that is self-preservation wrapped in creativity. However, here's where nuance enters. The prank, while not harmful, did feed Judith's narrative. It gave her something to latch onto and spin into fresh chaos. From a purely strategic standpoint, it might have been wiser to stick with documentation, complaints to management, or group action with other tenants. But that doesn't make you an AITA, it just means your choice, while cathartic, carried risk. Think of it as playing chess with someone who flips the board whenever they start to lose. You didn't cheat, but you gave them a new excuse to scream. If I were in your shoes, here's what I'd do next. 1. Document everything. Keep screenshots of her posts, her texts, her accusations. These may prove useful if she escalates to actual defamation or harassment charges. 2. Lean on community support. Grace and others are already weary of Judith. Strength lies in numbers. A collective voice to management or even the property owners carries more weight than individuals complaining separately. 3. Protect your peace. You've already recognized that Judith feeds on attention. The less fuel she gets, the faster she burns out. She will still flail, but without people validating her chaos, her influence shrinks. 4. Channel the humor wisely. Your rock prank was witty, but consider redirecting that same creativity into solidarity building with other tenants. Maybe host a community paint night where everyone decorates stones or planters. That way, the symbolism spreads beyond you and becomes something Judith can't single out. From a broader perspective, this entire episode highlights a lesson. People like Judith can't be reasoned with because their behavior isn't grounded in reason. They see shadows where there is light, enemies where there are neighbors, conspiracies where there is simple coincidence. Trying to play by her rules is like trying to outshout a megaphone, it just amplifies the noise. So here's my bottom line, you are not the AITA. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite part in the comments.
AITA for walking away after my ex came back into my life confused and controlling. I'm 30, and my husband Owen is 32. We have a 9-year-old son named Lucas, who is the absolute light of our lives. Lucas is an only child, so we've always been careful to teach him kindness and empathy, while also encouraging him to speak up when something feels wrong. For as long as I've been with Owen, my relationship with his father, Henry, has been strained. Henry is one of those men who still believes the family home should revolve around him and his needs. He has a very outdated and rigid view of how families should operate. He sees himself as the head of the household, even though he's not the one keeping things together. His wife, Margaret, has spent their entire marriage cooking, cleaning, and doing every bit of household labor, while Henry sits back, criticizes, and acts as though simply existing is a contribution. When Owen was growing up, he witnessed his dad belittling Margaret constantly. Henry would yell at her for meals being late, for laundry not being folded properly, or even for something as small as the wrong brand of coffee being in the cupboard. Owen and his 2 siblings all grew up resenting that behavior. Over the years, one sibling went completely no contact with Henry, while the other only interacts with him during the holidays out of a sense of obligation. Because of all this history, Owen and I have always had strict boundaries with Henry. We've made it clear that we will not allow Lucas to be around yelling, fighting, or toxic conversations. If Henry starts one of his tirades while Lucas is visiting, we've told Margaret to call us immediately so we can pick him up. Margaret fully supports this. She adores Lucas, and she's fiercely protective of him in her own quiet way. Lucas doesn't have any other grandparents in his life. My father passed away before Lucas was born, and I'm estranged from my mother for reasons I won't get into here. Because of that, Margaret has become incredibly important to him. She's the type of grandmother who makes pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, sneaks him extra desserts, and sits for hours listening to stories about his favorite video games. Lucas absolutely lights up when he sees her, and honestly, I think she lives for those visits. Last week, right before school started, Lucas stayed with his grandparents for 3 nights. Owen and I were nervous, but Margaret promised that she would keep Henry in check. When we went to pick Lucas up, I could tell immediately that something was off. Margaret greeted us warmly, but Henry was standing in the corner of the living room with his arms crossed, his face flushed with anger. As soon as Lucas went to show Owen a Lego creation he'd built, Henry pulled me aside. His voice was sharp and cold as he said, "We need to talk. Your son was disrespectful, and you need to teach him some manners." I was stunned. Lucas is a well-behaved kid. Sure, he has his moments. What 9-year-old doesn't? But outright disrespect isn't like him. I asked Henry to explain what happened. He puffed up his chest like he was delivering a grave report and said, "This morning, your mother-in-law made him breakfast." When I came into the kitchen, I asked where my breakfast was, and do you know what that boy said? He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Why do you always ask where your stuff is? Can't you do anything for yourself?" I bit my lips so hard to stop myself from laughing. The way Henry told the story, you'd think Lucas had just committed some kind of treason. The truth was, Lucas wasn't being malicious. He's just observant. He's noticed that whenever he's at their house, Margaret does everything while Henry barks orders. It's confusing for him because in our home, Owen and I share responsibilities equally. Lucas must have just blurted out the truth as he saw it. But to Henry, those words were like a dagger to his pride. I could see how much they rattled him. I managed to keep my laughter quiet while Henry glared at me, his face growing redder by the second. I told him calmly that Lucas didn't mean to be disrespectful, but inside, I was proud. My son had said what so many of us have wanted to say for years. Later, Margaret pulled me aside and admitted she didn't disagree with Lucas at all. In fact, she said she'd been fighting the urge to say something similar herself for decades. But she also gently suggested that my laughing at the story might have been a bit rude, since it clearly humiliated Henry. When Owen heard what happened, he burst out laughing and said he wished he'd been there to see his dad's face. I didn't scold Lucas for what he said. Instead, I sat down with him that evening and asked him to tell me what happened in his own words. He said, very matter-of-factly, Grandpa was just sitting there like always, and Grandma looked really tired. It didn't seem fair, so I told him he should help instead of just asking for stuff. That simple, honest statement broke my heart a little. Lucas has such a strong sense of fairness. I explained to him that while it's good to speak up when something feels wrong, we also have to try to use kind words so we don't hurt people's feelings unnecessarily. Lucas nodded thoughtfully and said, okay, but I still think Grandpa should make his own breakfast. The tension between us and Henry didn't end there. At dinner that night, Margaret made a beautiful meal for everyone to celebrate Lucas's last night of summer break. As we sat down, Henry was noticeably quiet, which is unusual for him. Halfway through the meal, out of nowhere, he slammed his fork down and said, I don't care what anyone thinks. This house runs because of me. I work hard, and I deserve respect. Lucas froze, wide-eyed. Owen immediately jumped in, telling his father to lower his voice. Margaret, surprisingly, spoke up too. She said, in a trembling voice, Henry, you don't deserve respect just for existing. You have to earn it, and lately, you haven't been acting like someone who deserves it. Henry stared at her like she'd just betrayed him. The room went completely silent. Then he stood up so abruptly that his chair tipped over. Without saying another word, he stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. Margaret sat back down, visibly shaken. Lucas went over to hug her, which nearly brought her to tears. On the car ride home, Owen was fuming. I'm done with him, he said. If he wants to act like a dictator, he can do it alone. Lucas doesn't need to be around that. The whole incident has left the family fractured. Henry hasn't spoken to any of us since that night, but honestly, I feel like Lucas's innocent comment was just the spark that revealed cracks that were already there. 2 days after Lucas's visit, I got a text from Margaret asking if she could call me when I had a quiet moment. The wording alone set off alarms in my head. When I answered, her voice was low and shaky, like she was trying not to cry. She told me that Henry had been stewing ever since Lucas made his comment about him not doing anything for himself. Apparently, he'd been pacing the house, muttering under his breath about disrespect and losing control of his family. Then, that morning, he announced that maybe Lucas shouldn't visit as often anymore because he's being poisoned against his elders. Margaret was heartbroken. She adores Lucas, and these visits are some of the happiest moments of her life. She said Henry's words made her feel like he was punishing her too, not just Lucas. She kept saying, he's just a little boy, he didn't mean anything by it. That evening, I was putting Lucas to bed when my phone buzzed. It was a long text message from Henry himself. It started politely, but quickly turned into a tirade. He accused me and Owen of failing as parents and encouraging Lucas to disrespect his elders. He said Lucas was on a dangerous path and that if we didn't fix his behavior immediately, Henry would ban him from coming to their home. The message ended with a line that made my stomach turn. In this family, respect for me comes first. Without it, there is no family. I showed the message to Owen. His face turned pale, then red with anger. He took a deep breath before replying. His response was calm but firm. He told his father that Lucas was a child and that children repeat what they observe. He reminded Henry that Lucas's comment was an innocent observation, not an act of rebellion. Then he added that Lucas wouldn't be visiting anymore if Henry continued yelling at Margaret or creating a hostile environment. Henry didn't respond. The next morning, Margaret called me again, this time sobbing. She told me Henry had been ranting all night about how Owen was turning the whole family against him. She said Henry claimed he was the head of the family and that no one had the right to challenge him, especially a 9-year-old boy. Through tears, Margaret admitted she was exhausted. She said, sometimes I just want to pack a bag and come stay with you for a while. My heart broke for her. I told her she was always welcome at our home, no questions asked. Later that week, Owen and I invited Margaret over for dinner, partly to cheer her up and partly to give her some peace away from Henry. Lucas, completely unaware of the drama swirling around him, proudly showed her how he'd learned to make his own scrambled eggs. Margaret smiled through watery eyes and hugged him tightly. As we were sitting down to dinner, the front door suddenly opened. It was Henry. He hadn't called, hadn't knocked, just barged in. His face was red, and his voice was sharp as he accused us of poisoning Margaret and Lucas against him. Lucas's fork clattered to his plate. His eyes went wide with fear, and he bolted to his room. Owen stood up immediately. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "Dad, you need to stop. You can't come into my house and scare my son." Henry sneered. "Scare him? You've turned my own grandson into someone who thinks he can disrespect me and my family. You're weak, Owen, just like your mother." That was the last straw. Owen stepped closer, his jaw clenched. "You do not get to talk to Mom like that. You either treat everyone in this family with respect, or you won't be part of Lucas's life. Period." For a terrifying moment, I thought Henry might explode. His fists were balled, his chest heaving. But instead of yelling, he went eerily quiet. Then, without a word, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled on the wall. Lucas came out of his room a few minutes later, visibly shaken. Owen scooped him up and held him tight, whispering that everything was okay. The next morning, Margaret texted me. She said Henry had packed a bag and left to stay with his brother for a while. Her exact words were, "For the first time in years, the house feels quiet. I can finally breathe." But the drama didn't end there. Later that week, Henry began sending group texts to Owen and Margaret, claiming we were destroying the family legacy. In one message, he accused Owen of being controlled by his wife and claimed that I was manipulating Lucas to turn him against his grandfather. Owen ignored the texts, but Margaret replied to one. She wrote, "Henry, I love you, but Lucas is a child. This is not about control or disrespect. It's about kindness and safety. Please think about what you're doing." Henry never responded. Meanwhile, Lucas began asking questions. He noticed Margaret was visiting us more often and wondered why Grandpa wasn't around. I sat him down and gently explained that sometimes adults have big feelings and disagreements, and those feelings can make them say hurtful things. Lucas thought for a moment, then said, "I just don't like it when Grandpa makes Grandma sad." That simple, honest statement broke my heart. A week later, Margaret came over again for dinner. She seemed lighter, almost like a different person without Henry looming over her. Halfway through the meal, she looked at Owen and said softly, "I don't think I want to go back home, at least not while he's like this." Owen nodded. "Stay as long as you need. We'll figure it out." The room fell quiet as we all realized what that meant. Margaret might finally be ready to stand up for herself after decades of enduring Henry's behavior. As for Henry, he's still not speaking to us. The last we heard, he's staying with his brother and complaining to anyone who will listen about how his family betrayed him. For now, though, our home feels peaceful. Lucas is happy, Margaret is slowly rediscovering her independence, and Owen and I are united in protecting our son from the toxic patterns of the past. Maybe one day Henry will realize that respect isn't demanded, it's earned.
After considering every detail, the situation reads like a generational conflict fueled by outdated power structures, not a matter of you failing as a parent. Your child voiced an innocent truth. Children notice contradictions between words and actions, and Lucas simply expressed confusion when he saw an adult expecting constant service. That's not malice, that's observation. You didn't encourage him to attack, and you certainly didn't weaponize him against Henry. Instead, you modeled calm communication by talking to Lucas afterward and guiding him toward more gentle phrasing without punishing his honesty. That shows responsible parenting. Henry, on the other hand, demonstrates entitlement. He clings to an antiquated image of authority, where his worth comes automatically rather than through consistent care and contribution. Respect can't be commanded by decree, it must be nurtured through fairness, kindness, and reliability. The fact that Margaret herself admitted Lucas wasn't wrong shows that Henry's pride, not your son's words, is the true issue. From my perspective, you're not the AITA here. Actually, quite the opposite. You're standing firm on healthy boundaries, showing Lucas that love and respect flow from actions, not demands. You also protected Margaret's dignity by making space for her to reflect on her own role in a long, oppressive dynamic. That's courageous, and it creates the possibility of healing across generations. If you had ridiculed Henry in front of everyone, weaponized Lucas's statement, or taught your child to openly mock adults, then there could be an argument that you carried some responsibility. But you didn't. You laughed privately, you discussed it thoughtfully, and you emphasized empathy without erasing the truth. That's balanced parenting. So, to deliver an unmistakable verdict, you are not the AITA. The AITA in this story is Henry, because his fragile ego, refusal to adapt, and obsession with control poisoned the household. Lucas simply became the mirror that revealed what was already broken. If I may suggest a path forward, continue giving Lucas tools for assertiveness with compassion. Support Margaret as she experiments with independence, and maintain distance from Henry until he shows consistent change, not just apologies but actual effort to treat others with respect. That's the only way reconciliation will ever be safe. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out AITA for letting karma handle my super evil HOA president. Click here to watch it now.